Today's event has been made possible to the generous support of our sponsors, and just to name a few, we have Coronation Property, Hume Community Housing, Landcom, Lend-Lease, Liverpool City Council, St George Community Housing, Stockland, and the Wyndham Inglis Hotel. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, of course, everyone here today is a VIP, but I'd like to acknowledge some people in the room who we're very grateful who have made time to be here, including Minister Rose Jackson, who's here today, Minister Paul Scully, who'll be joining us very shortly, Mayor Ned Renoon, who is such an influential part of this part of Sydney, MP Judith Hannan, and Mayor Lisa Lake, and of course Trina Jones, the newly appointed New South Wales Rental Commissioner, who certainly has her hands full at the moment. So thank you, everyone. I did mention that we have an impressive lineup of speakers here today, but we also want to hear from you, from everyone in the room. You can ask questions and engage with our panellists and our speakers. There's a platform called Slido, and it's an interactive Q&A. Now, there are more than 350 delegates in the room today from all levels of government, private sector, from community housing providers, industry experts, and I'm expecting some good questions, so please don't be afraid to ask some questions. One person I know who will be asking the tough questions today is the Dialogue CEO, Adam Leto, and I would love to welcome him to get today underway. If we could please give a warm welcome for Adam and welcome him to the stage. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Up and Out GWS Housing Summit, the first time we've staged this event as a way to bring together a range of stakeholders and voices to understand and, to use the government's word, confront the housing crisis that has gripped the state and the nation. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands which we meet today, the Darug people, and pay my respects to Indigenous elders past, present and emerging. As we approach the upcoming referendum on October 14, I do want to underline the dialogue support for the voice of Parliament. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention on this issue, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more over the next few weeks. And yes, at the core of this matter, it is about ensuring our Indigenous voices are heard. But beyond that, my hope is that both as a region and as a nation, we also understand that this isn't just about talking, but about listening. And when I say listening, I'm not talking about listening with the aim of responding, listening so that we can reply. I'm talking about listening with the sole intent of understanding. If we can walk away after October 14 and understand what is being said by Indigenous voices, then hopefully we'll be in a better place. Speaking of understanding, we've got a lot to unpack today. We've got the Minister for Housing, Rose Jackson, coming up very shortly to have a chat about some of the recent announcements that you may have heard in the state budget earlier this week, with a specific focus on social and affordable housing. Later on at lunch, we've got Minister for Planning and Public Spaces, Paul Scully, who's hopefully going to explain whether we're going to be building up or out, as the name of our event suggests, whether we need to be building 300 or 400,000 homes over the next 5 years, whether the future housing is going to be concentrated in the west or spread across the city, whether government is serious about stripping back red tape and making it easier for developers to help solve the supply problem. These, I'm sure, are just a few of the questions that many of you may have. I should say up front that this is not just a New South Wales issue or a GWS one, this is a national issue. It's also a complex and a nuanced one. Unsurprisingly, you're not always going to understand the detail of new government policy or planned reform in a 400-word article in the Sydney Morning Herald. I know we've got Michael Cosdell over there who's been doing a great job, but there's only so much he can do. So one of the aims of today is to hear from the ministers to help them explain the nuance, the drivers that sit behind their decision making, allow industry community and other stakeholders to ask the questions. We also think, given the impact, given that the majority of residents in Sydney will be living in our region over the next decade, that we need to apply a local lens, noting that the demographics, the population growth, the economy and the development landscape is unlike anything else in the nation. Before I throw to Minister Jackson, there are a few numbers which I'll put forward just to help frame today's discussion and also highlight why I think Western Sydney is a little bit different. If we start from the top, here's the situation. According to the National Housing Accord, New South Wales needs to build 375,000 homes over the next 5 years. That's a tick over 75,000 a year, which probably doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're looking for some context, over the past decade, the highest number of dwelling completions we've been able to achieve in the state is around 40,000 on average. The situation hasn't been helped by our DO processing times. In the past 12 months, the average approval in the state has increased from 83 days to 106 days. So you can see we've got a bit of work to do. We're narrowing it into the supply of social and affordable housing. Recent figures just in Greater Western Sydney show that we've got also a bit of ground to make up. This shortfall is putting more pressure on some of the most vulnerable people in our state. If you live in social and affordable housing, there's a pretty good chance that you're living in Greater Western Sydney. 8 of the top 10 Greater Sydney LGAs for number of households living in social and affordable housing are located in Greater Western Sydney, with the largest numbers coming from Canterbury, Bankstown and Blacktown. The average wait time to secure social housing residence in Greater Western Sydney is about 2 years, which is not really great. 40% of our households are in rental or mortgage stress. The sad reality of the current housing crisis is that it is being felt harder in Greater Western Sydney than most places. In a region where the median household income is roughly $1,700 before tax, combined with increased cost of living pressures, if you currently live in the region, there's a good chance you're either locked out of owning a home or locked into mortgage or rental stress. Some of these issues have been promising to come to a head for a while, and although there have been some warning signals that have come through, very few could have predicted the onset of a global pandemic, which is fair to say has had a lasting and serious effect on the construction industry, one of the largest employers in the region. Don't let the cranes over the Western Sydney skies fool you. Over the last decade, net dwelling completions peaked in 2018-19, which was just before the pandemic hit, at 22,000 homes. Last year, we managed to only build half of that, just over 12,000 homes. Approvals, builds, completions all slowed down during the pandemic, and as we stand here today, they're yet to return to pre-COVID levels. It's however not all doom and gloom. As we heard during this week's budget and as we've heard consistently from the Premier over the past 6 months, we've got a government that does get the urgency. It has shown that it's prepared to work with engaged, proactive and capable industry, including community housing providers and property developers, financiers and importantly local councils, many of whom are here today. There is a lot to do to meet our housing targets. And if the first 6 months of the Minns government has been about due diligence, about getting the right systems and governance in place, taking a considered and consultative approach to how it confronts the housing crisis, then in the coming months and years will no doubt be centred on translating this thinking, this strategy, into actual delivery. There won't be one silver bullet, but if the government can continue to send the right signals, that it is looking ways to make it easier to do business with its partners, to listen to industry and the community, and importantly, to take a lead position on addressing supply through agencies like Landcom and Homes New South Wales, then we'll be heading in the right direction.